I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason.
Golden Spiral Media presents the Friday the 13th rewatch.
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
Join Corey and Nathan each week as they slash their way through campgrounds, woods, Manhattan, hell, and space as they discuss another installment in the Friday the 13th franchise.
Hey, wasn't that the road up for Camp Crystal Lake back there?
Send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback. Like our Facebook page at facebook.com/rewatch podcast. And follow us on Twitter at rewatchpod.
Legend has it that Jason came back to get even. Every now and then, the murders just start up.
Today we're discussing Freddy vs. Jason, starring Monica Keena, Jason Ritter, Kelly Rowland, Chris Marquette, Brendan Fletcher, Catherine Isabel, and Lachlan Monroe, with Robert Englund as Freddy and Ken Kersinger as Jason. Directed by Ronnie Yu. Welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast. I'm Corey, and this Everclear is kicking my ass.
And I'm Nathan, and somebody please wake me up. Please?
Please.
Damn straight somebody wake you up, man. This whole film is based around that, but that's alright.
What, are you scared of Freddy?
A little bit. Do you have fear inside you?
Well, let's just say there's not a lot of killing done by Freddy in this, but we'll talk about it.
We will definitely get into it.
But before we get there, of course, we want to remind you that we are part of the Golden Spiral Media Podcast Network. Send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback. You can type out a message, or you can use the SpeakPipe widget to record your own voice, or you can call 304-837-2278. And also head over to facebook.com/goldenspiralmedia and follow on Twitter at GSM Podcasts. Okay, let's begin where we always begin and check out the trailer for Freddy vs. Jason.
Done.
Warn your friends. Warn everyone.
Welcome to my nightmare.
We're not safe awake or asleep.
Why won't you die? Freddy versus Jason.
Place your bets.
Alright, welcome back. That was the trailer for Freddy vs. Jason, and I hope you were as excited about it as we were after, going through 10 or 11 Jason films and finally getting to the big, versus match that they've been discussing since Jason 5 or whatever it was in 1986, 1987. I think they started roughly talking about this team up, but it all finally came together and it was actually finally released on August 15th, 2003 on a budget of $30 million, and it went on to gross domestically, or worldwide I should say, of $114 million. So it did okay. On the opening weekend, it opened up against such films as Open Range, Uptown Girls, and Grind. Other films in the box office at the time were Lara Croft Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life, Bad Boys 2, Spy Kids 3D Game Over, Biscuit, American Wedding, and Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. So, as per usual, some pretty stiff competition, but Freddy versus Jason, I think, stood reasonably tall. I'm not going to say it was a giant amongst men, but it certainly did okay, didn't it?
It did, and I saw this one in the cinema. I don't know about you. Did you go and catch this one, pay out some money?
Yeah, I think I vaguely did, and I've made it fairly clear that I'm not a big horror guy, or wasn't, prior to watching this series. I think my appreciation has certainly increased through the involvement of the podcast and whatnot, but I was never a big kind of slasher guy. So I remember seeing Freddy vs. Jason in 2003, and truthfully, I have not seen it since. Have you rewatched it?
I certainly have. I am a horror guy, and, you know, I like Jason and I like Freddy, so yeah, I've seen this one a few times. I'm not going to give away how I actually feel about the film just yet, but yeah, I've seen this film a fair few times.
What's your relationship to the Nightmare on Elm Street series? Like, is it as prominent as the Jason stuff? Because again, like, I have not seen, well, actually, I tell a lie, I've seen a few of them, but I certainly haven't seen all of them, and I haven't seen them in a long, long time. Like, again, without going into too much detail, I kind of said to you the other day that in hindsight, in reviewing Freddy vs. Jason, I kind of wish I watched all of the Nightmares. I think it probably would have been helpful.
Yeah, you know, and I think we'll probably have to get to that series one day in our rewatch, so we can get a bit of perspective.
There's so much to watch, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is 7 Freddy films and then the remake. So including this one, that would make 9 total.
What was the remake like? That was done in 2000 and...
Yeah.
God, it was actually just a couple of years ago, actually. Did you see it?
I did see it. It was okay. It's nothing special. I think maybe I might compare it more in next week's discussion of the Friday the 13th remake.
Okay.
But Freddy, he's an odd character, and I have seen all of the Nightmare films before, but I've only really watched the whole series like once.
Okay.
And the ones that I return to are the 2 which I think are the good ones. Part 1, the original Wes Craven, and Part 3, the Dream Warriors.
One thing I did notice, because at the start of this film, Freddy does like a bit of a monologue right at the beginning where he sets the scene, and they do a whole bunch of flashbacks to the previous Nightmare films. And the thing that actually caught me a little off guard by it was how gross they were. I was not expecting the level of gore. Like, it was much gorier than the Jason films have been. Like, the Jason films have been gory, don't get me wrong, but the Nightmare films with Freddy Krueger were borderline, like, quite disgusting. Some of the imagery, I mean, don't misunderstand me, there's been moments in the Jason series, but generally speaking, Jason will like kill somebody and then like a second later the camera will cut immediately and you don't see it. Not really anyway. There's a couple of moments here and there that's pretty full on, but generally speaking it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's true. As far as like icon killers of the 80s, slasher craze, Jason, Freddy, and Michael Myers probably, and then you could throw in some other ones like Chucky and stuff like that. Freddy is a very different beast to Jason, if you will. So, it's going to be tough to mash these two together, and, we're going to talk about it as we get into this film, because that's exactly what they had to do.
Is it fair to say there's probably a little bit more, like, lore involved with the Freddy kind of mythology than there is with the Jason mythology? Because as much as I have enjoyed our rewatch, the consistency about, like, the story and how it all kind of comes together is quite silly, and it doesn't really hold together very well. They only start treating Jason as a supernatural being like 3 or 4 films kind of into the series or whatever it might be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for the first few, he's like this drowned child that has this really crazy mother, but then they kind of move away from the crazy mum.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it, is that Freddy is set up as supernatural in the very first film. And then it moves on from there. And you're sure they add things as it goes, but his relative mythology stays the same.
Yeah, we should probably leave it there, because you're right. Like, I think eventually Nightmare is one of the series that I think we've talked about it in the past. I'd certainly like to watch it because I haven't seen them, and I think it would be an interesting chat. So yeah, we'll probably put that one on our list.
We'll get there down the line. So for this film in particular, like you mentioned, and we've mentioned on previous shows, a very long time, people have wanted to see these two go together. It's been something that's been in the cultural zeitgeist for like 15, 20 years at this point, and they could just never bring it together. Even after New Line got the rights to both of them, still didn't come together until now. And interestingly enough, as far as we can see, there was a few people who were either approached or at some stage involved in bringing this to the screen, including Mr. Peter Jackson, who although a good choice in his early career, by 2003, I can see why he would have not done Freddy versus Jason.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was he... Lord of the Rings was... that was happening well and truly by then, wasn't it?
Exactly.
He had moved on from being a schlocky kind of Meet the Feebles, Brain Dead, and all those kind of films. Like, he was making The Frighteners, and well, actually, The Frighteners was years before this, but Lord of the Rings and whatnot. So, yeah, he'd well and truly moved on.
And then Rob Zombie was also offered to direct. This is around the time when he was working on House of a Thousand Corpses, his breakout horror movie success. So that makes sense. But he, of course, went on to do a remake of Halloween rather than doing Freddy vs. Jason.
Have you followed Rob Zombie's career, like, at all?
I
have you
have.
watched those movies? Because I quite like... Actually, I liked Houses of a Thousand Corpses when it came out years ago. I even liked The Devil's Rejects, but most of the films he's made since then I haven't really connected with.
Yeah, they're not excellent films. And you're right, House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, good films. People even kind of slam his remake of Halloween. I don't think it's that bad.
Didn't he do the sequel to Halloween 2?
Yeah, no, don't worry about that one.
And then he did another one called Lords of Salem and a few others. Yeah, but Halloween 2 was bad. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Rob Zombie.
No. And then also Sean S. Cunningham was involved with the project, and he does, I believe, get a credit at least for his involvement in the first one, I guess. But he dropped out pretty early on in production here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's involved as a producer or an EP or something like that in this film, because he got a big credit at the start of the film. So he was actually one of the vocal opponents to Ronnie Yu recasting Jason, because for several films Kane Hodder had been playing him, and to be truthful, had really made the character his own. I mean, I think we talked about it several times throughout the series that he really gave Jason a sense of presence and menace, and he was just like a total badass, and they recast him with a guy named Ken Kersinger. Now, Ken Kersinger does actually have a history with the Friday the 13th series. He was actually in part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, where there was a kill where Jason walks into some kind of diner and a cook runs out of the kitchen to attack Jason, and then Jason picks him up and throws him against the wall, and he breaks like a mirror, and that is Ken Kersinger, who later went on to play Jason in this new film. Now, the story goes, for whatever reason, they didn't feel that Kane Hodder was big enough because of the whole Freddy versus Jason aspect. They wanted Jason to be like an imposing figure over Freddy Kruger, which doesn't really make a lot of sense in my mind, because Kane Hodder plays the character so aptly and so well. So I, for one, was very disappointed to hear that Kane was not Jason in this film, and without going too far, I felt the lack of his involvement was certainly a detriment to the film, like, don't you think?
Yeah, that's just it, you know. It's all well and good to say, oh, you wanted Jason to be a big opposing figure over Freddy, but why recast him? I mean, this is the guy who plays Jason. Like, he created the Jason character from, what was it, part 7 onwards. So he's the one that people wanted to see. So recasting him, poor choice from the get-go. He had to play Jason in this.
And don't misunderstand, Ken Kersinger did a fine job, but I don't think he did a great job either. Like, I don't think he really watched the previous films to see the nuances that Kane kind of brought to the role of Jason. I mean, Jason is a fucked up guy. He's crazy, but he had this menacing kind of tone. Like, something that I kind of missed is whenever they kind of would stop on Jason in the previous films, he was always like breathing really heavily, and you could see his whole torso moving, and you really had a sense of presence and movement, and you felt that just those little kind of nuances added a sense of humanity to what the Jason character actually is, even though he's a psychopath on the loose, killing, untold amounts of people. And Ken Kersinger did not bring that to the role.
And, a lot of people would argue that this is a new line thing, right? Is that, everybody knows that New Line is very often referred to as the house that Freddy built, right? In their infancy, they produced the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and they just kept producing them to get funds, right? New Line is what it is today because they produced so many Nightmare on Elm Street films.
Well, you can't blame them, I suppose. But and this film definitely feels like it's New Line's version of Freddy versus Jason, if you know what I mean.
It's like they recast Jason, but can you imagine if they tried to recast Freddy for this film? They didn't do that, did they? No, because they knew damn straight that if it wasn't Robert Englund playing Freddy, nobody would have come and seen this movie. So people feel like there was a little bit of bias there. Is that they wanted to champion Freddy more than they do Jason. Now, having said that, Freddy kills a total of one person in this movie, right? Jason gets all the kills in this film, bar one.
Yeah.
So
No, he's pretty badass.
As much as, Freddy's on the screen and he's the one who does the talking, whereas Jason does no talking.
He never shuts the fuck up, does he?
I know. I think they were trying to walk a line there, and it's hard to gauge, what New Line was trying to do and what they weren't trying to do, and whether or not they were intentionally trying to piss off people.
Now, somebody that they did recast in this film was Jason's mother, who makes one of her rare appearances in the whole series. Like, how many times has Betsy Palmer, or not Betsy Palmer, I should say Pamela Voorhees, actually showed up, Corey? I'm just trying to recall.
It's probably like the first two, and that was about it.
Maybe the first two, but Betsy Palmer hasn't come back for any of them. She was only in the first one. Betsy Palmer was actually asked to reprise her role of Mrs. Voorhees, but actually turned it down because she felt the role was too small of a part for her. So isn't that like the 18th time they've asked Betsy Palmer to get involved with Friday the 13th? And she just says no every single time.
Nah, not doing it. There was supposed to be a sequel to Freddy vs. Jason as well, which never came around. But, they did actually plan to try and bring Ash into the series. Ash as in Evil Dead Ash. That ended up in comic book form. But apparently there was an end scene for this movie where Jason and Freddy end up finishing their battle in hell. And before they can do so, Pinhead from Hellraiser comes out and breaks up the fight and asks, "What are you gentlemen fighting about?" or something like that, "What's in the box? Pain." Whatever Pinhead says. But, rights issue. They didn't end up doing that. Alright, so shall we get into our main discussion of the film?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alright, so checking out the timeline of this one, as we discussed last week, this one is actually set before Jason X to try and keep some semblance of continuity, which doesn't make sense because Friday the 13th doesn't really care about continuity.
Yeah, they don't. And even though Kane Hodder plays Jason in Jason X, which is set after this film, and then they got Ken Kersinger, which, anyway, whatever. We should all just give up trying to make sense of the continuity of these films because they're all over the place. But as I've said 1,000 times, you just got to watch them and you just accept it and just move on, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And this one doesn't even take place close to a Friday the 13th at all.
Can I also add, too, that this film sets the scene that Camp Crystal Lake and Elm Street are within driving distance of they're like an hour from each other.
I know. If I remember correctly, Elm Street is supposed to be in Springwood, Ohio or something. So I don't know how close Ohio and New Jersey is supposed to be. I don't know. Did we talk about maybe Camp Crystal Lake was somewhere not New Jersey or something at one point? I don't know.
I think they made it fairly clear that it was meant to be in the New Jersey region or area. I think they've pointed out to the geography of where Camp Crystal Lake actually is, but they just make shit up as they go on.
I know.
I'm
just
sure
we're gonna drive out to Camp Crystal Lake. Let's go. It takes them 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. It just takes them 20 minutes and then keep. So we're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we?
We are. Okay, so this movie opens up. Like you said, we get a bit of a recap from Freddy about him, really. It's all about Freddy. And he talks about how he cannot come back and kill kids in their nightmares because it is their fear that gives him his power, right?
Yes.
And it seems that something has happened within Springwood where they have managed to have everybody forget about Freddy. So his big plan is to bring Jason out of hell which would make sense. That's where Jason was at the end of, I guess, 2 movies ago, which was called Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. So Freddy brings Jason out of hell by, I guess, impersonating Jason's mother, who for some reason is an old woman. So apparently Pamela Voorhees has aged into a really old woman, even though she's been dead since forever.
Can't Freddy get you in your dreams? It implies that Jason is sleeping in hell somewhere. Did he die, or did he just get sent to hell? Can Freddy access hell? But anyway, as I said, if you overthink it, it gets crazy. So you just got to accept it. So you're right. Freddy impersonates Pamela Voorhees, and he somehow convinces Jason to kind of wake up and then make his way from wherever he is over to Springwood and start terrorizing the teenagers. That is essentially the scene. So after we kind of meet Freddy and he sets this up, we then meet our hero of the film, who is a character named Laurie, who actually lives with her widowed father. But she's also got her friends Kia and Gib staying over. So they kind of set the scene with all the friends and them hanging out. Like, we meet the girl from Destiny's Child. She's there too, isn't she?
Yeah, she plays Kia.
Which I find really surprising that she decided to make this film, because Destiny's Child were like mega famous when this film came out. So the fact that she chose this as her vehicle of choice, and I had a look at her filmography, she hasn't really done all that much. This is like a rare film, and she chose Freddy versus Jason. It was an odd choice.
Well, I mean, come on, at the same time, Beyonce would have been doing Austin Powers 3.
Yeah, no,
so,
you're dead, bro.
You know, they chose these ones. I mean, and really with Destiny's Child, I mean, it's Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, and the other one, who did nothing, and I don't even know what her name is.
Yeah.
So, you know, at least people remember Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child and from doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, we've got our lead here, our, I guess, quote-unquote final girl of this film, Laurie, which is an interesting name to give the character, because Laurie is the Jamie Lee Curtis character from Halloween. So I thought it was interesting that they gave the lead character that name.
It was the first thing I thought of, actually, when they said the word Laurie. I thought, are they referring to Halloween? And the answer is a big fat yes. I think they are anyway. So it's all rushing back to me now that I'm thinking about it, because you're right. We meet Laurie, we meet her friends, but these boys show up out of nowhere, don't they? Because the dad has gone out somewhere. It's Trey and Blake, and they're real douchebags. Trey is the first kill because he kind of gets one of the girls in bed, and he's a real douchebag to her, isn't he? Like, he's just being really just not a very nice person, and just saying really derogatory things and being really awful. And he gets the girl in bed, and he's like, I think they're finished kind of doing it, and he kind of kicks her out of bed and says, "You go and have a shower. You smell disgusting," or something like that. She goes to have a shower. Jason comes in, attacks Trey really quite violently. Yeah,
he like stabs him to death with the machete, and then like flicks the bed up in half. Like, I don't, was this like some sort of like fold out couch or something? I don't know what kind of bed just folds in half like that, but it does. And that's how Jason like folds him backwards like that. It's odd. And I don't know, it's such a strange beginning, right? Like, all these kids are kind of like stereotypes of just horror films, right? I mean, Laurie is clearly set up at the beginning as the good girl virgin because Blake is hitting on her, and she's like, oh my god, like, he's so stupid, get him out of here. And then you got Kelly Rowland, like, just talking about getting a nose job or whatever.
You've also got like Laurie's ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, they just talk about him, out of nowhere.
But we kind of learn that Laurie's ex-boyfriend is in a psychiatric institution. Now, can you give me a little bit of history? Is any of this related to previous Nightmare films? Because I was totally unaware if there was any like history relating to the previous, like, you know what I mean?
Okay, there is, okay. When they cut to the institution and all the kids are being given those pills, Rehypnol?
Yes,
what is it?
It's called Hypnosil.
Rehypnol. That does the opposite.
Hilarious. Yeah, the opposite. That's exactly right.
Hypnosil, that is from the movies, right? It stops you from dreaming. It's some sort of like neural inhibitor or something like that.
Okay.
So that's from the Freddy movies too. So yeah, it's all very much tied in. And then, Gib is the slutty girl as well, which is obvious because she has a sex scene like right here at the beginning.
So we meet all these characters. We got Laurie, and you're right, they're all kind of stereotypes, and they're playing on very kind of familiar tropes that we all kind of recognize. And to be truthful, it's just, I really wish they just challenged themselves just a little bit more, because the film really lacks a little bit of energy because of all the stereotypes. I just wish the film was just slightly more challenging, or go the other opposite ends, and it was just, it was like literally just a fight between Freddy and Jason. It was my, and I'm sorry to kind of go on tangent a little bit, but it was always my argument in the Batman vs Superman film that they came out recently, or last year, whatever it was, is if the film was literally just Batman versus Superman for 2 hours, I would have been right into it. But it was 16 minutes of Batman versus Superman. This film is not that much different. You do have a little bit of Freddy versus Jason, but it's not that much, is there?
Yeah. And you know what they do here is, like, it's very convenient and very, I guess in a way, ham-fisted, right? Because they've set up that the reason Jason is there is because Freddy needs people to be scared again. So they will start thinking that it's him, and then they'll remember, and then he can come back, right? Because he's powered by their fear. And here at the beginning, it's like, okay, so nobody remembers Freddy, but we need a way for them to remember him. So Jason kills this kid in the house, and, you know, the cops have had all this planned out. They've got all those kids in the institution having their hypno cell, and they're walking out of the house, and this fucking cop goes, oh my God, this is the same house. It's Freddy Krueger again, right? Like, right in front of the kids. And the sheriff is like, shut up, man. Like, this is not right. And that is the only reason Freddy comes back. Because later in the hospital, later in the police station, Laurie's like, oh, I think I heard that cop say something. Oh, what did he say? Oh, that's right. He said Freddy. And then Freddy's back. I'm just like, oh, off. That is so ham-fisted.
It felt a little kind of shoehorned in. You're dead right, because Freddy kind of needs people to remember him, and to be truthful, it's a fairly convoluted plot to kind of get Freddy back into the equation. So again, I'm not familiar with the lore of the Nightmare films, but it just didn't really feel all that kind of natural, the way it was kind of happening. But you're dead right. The cop kind of comes out and sort of says, oh, this is Freddy's, and that there's that grumpy cop who's clearly the boss. He's like desperately saying, let's not talk about him. He's in the past. Let's move on. And even that young cop who kind of approaches him and says, look, can you tell me what's going on with this murder? I keep hearing a name, and he gets kind of cranky at him, and he's like new to the area, and he can't get any answers, and all that kind of stuff. And it's an interesting kind of scenario, but it just doesn't feel that natural, does it?
And then after all this happens, and Laurie has, you know, a nightmare on Elm Street kind of nightmare with Freddy, they go home, and Blake is like chilling out on his porch, drinking from a decanter, and his dad comes up and gives him shit, pretty much. And he's like, Dad, like, my friend just died, all right? Give me some space. And then he has a nightmare, which is very Freddy. It's got a goat in it. Like, Freddy likes to just, like, throw random goats into nightmares. But Freddy can't kill him. He still doesn't have enough, like, fear power.
Yeah.
So he's like, all right, I'll let Jason have some fun. And then he wakes up. Jason's there. Jason has, like, swung his machete, like, so quickly at Blake's dad's head that it hasn't actually come off. So when Blake shakes him, the head comes off. And then Jason kills Blake. I mean, what?
It's pretty disturbing, isn't it?
I know Jason's supernatural and all, but, like, yeah. Like, he's
anyway.
that good with a machete? Come on.
Yeah, they set it up as if his whole power is based around that machete. Like, you can't really kill Jason. Like, I think that's the thing about this whole fight. Like, there's no stakes involved, is there? Because Freddy, you can't really get rid of him, and same with Jason. He's not going to go anywhere. I mean, he's been sent to hell. Like, he's kind of been kind of liquefied in goo in the Manhattan, when in that radioactive stuff in the sewers, and all kinds of terrible things have happened to him, and he's not going anywhere, is he?
No, exactly. But, you know, from here, it is just going to be a long time till we get anywhere. Because they're really just going to set up all this stuff about Freddy, pretty much. Because nobody knows about Jason. Anybody who's seen Jason is dead already. And so it's just going to be like a run-of-the-mill film. Like, I don't want to go to sleep because I'm having nightmares. parents trying to drug their kids so they go to sleep, but all they want to do is be with their friends. That is every Nightmare on Elm Street film in a nutshell.
It all centers around the ex-boyfriend who's kind of in the psychiatric institution with his friend Mark Davis. His name's Will Rowlands, and he actually escapes the institution to actually get to Laurie to kind of find out kind of what's going on. And the police are in pursuit, and they're trying to find Mark and Will, but to no kind of luck. He and Will actually returned to Springwood to tell Laurie about Freddy, and then Mark actually later learns of the city plans to actually eradicate Freddy and realise that they have actually nullified it by actually reminding people of Freddy. So it wasn't just the cop saying the name Freddy Krueger, it was also Will kind of coming back and reminding people about who Freddy Krueger actually was and actually giving him the fear power and all that kind of stuff. So once this kind of happens, Laurie and the others, they actually attend what appears to be some kind of dance party, like a rave in a cornfield, and it's kind of this really strange scene. The thing that I never quite understood is just how like stupid these people were. Like, you have this scenario where people are getting beheaded by crazed maniacs, the police are involved, suicides, all kinds of terrible things are happening in their small town USA, and none of them give a shit about any of it. All they want to do is like get off their face and drink heaps and just be dickheads, and like they're not really thinking, are they?
I know this. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
All we needed was Shelley from Friday the 13th part. Was it 4 or 5?
Part 3.
All we needed was him to show up and chug a beer or something like that. That would have made me laugh.
Well, I have to say at this point, I really am not liking the Laurie character, and I don't know if it's a characterization thing or if more so it's the actor playing Laurie, Monica Keener, because I've seen her in stuff before. I mean, she was in one of my all-time favorite shows, Dawson's Creek, for several seasons. She did a great movie with Kirsten Dunst called The Hairy Bird, which I think people should check out. It's very good. In this film, I'm just not buying it. I think she gives a terrible performance here.
She just reminded me of like the kind of character like Brittany Murphy would have probably kind of gone for. Like, she probably would have auditioned for that role. Like, they look kind of similar. It's the same kind of thing, and they would have been give or take the same age at the same time too. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But just up until this, I'm just not buying. Especially the scene like before the rave, like before she goes to school, when she's telling her dad like she doesn't want to go to sleep and she doesn't want to drink the juice that he's drugged.
Oh, that's right.
She was terrible in that scene. I did not buy it for a second.
Yeah, because they set up everyone, like the dickhead dad who apparently killed her mum, and then she kind of confront his dad and says, "Dad, can you please tell me what happened to Mum? And did she actually die in a car accident or whatever it was?" It's like, "Of course she did, dear." And then all the truth kind of comes out.
But then we're at this rave scene, and she gets to see Will, because she only saw him briefly at the school when they came in and just started talking about Freddy. Like, Mark just starts talking about Freddy to everybody, and she faints or something. So they see each other again at this rave, and like she's like so happy to see him. Like, oh my god, enough of my life. And it's so terrible. And then of course Jason shows up and starts slaughtering people, but not before Freddy pulls Gib into a nightmare. She passes out drunk. To top it all off, not only is she in a Freddy nightmare, but in the real world, this weird rave lunatic covered in glow sticks is attempting to rape her unconscious body. I mean, this is just gross, man. Like, I get it. Like horror films and stuff, I get it. Like, I've talked all over these films about how I love the kills and the creative kills and stuff like that. This is an unconscious teenager, and this guy's trying to rape her, and that is just gross.
It's not right. Yeah.
Ugh, I cannot stand. It's just I do not get this scene, but that's what I mean. Like, Freddy's getting like no kills in this movie. He's got her in the nightmare, and then Jason intervenes.
Because Freddy Krueger's a bad guy. Like, isn't he like a pedophile? Isn't that his history? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pedophile and child killer.
Pedophile and child killer, and they he's really nasty. I realize he's a nightmare. I know he's a monster, but he says some really awful things throughout this film about doing terrible things to people and laughing about it and just like getting glee out of it. Where at least with Jason, he's like this silent killer. Where yes, he's a terrible man, but he's also he's terrible because he had a really awful childhood and who had this terrible kind of event that was totally not his fault fall on him, and what he was kind of molded just kind of happened, where Freddy chose to be like that, and he's just a terrible person. And I really hated spending time with Freddy Krueger, and there's heaps of him in this film. That's what I said at the start of this film, he never stops talking, never, and he's always saying you like that and all that kind of stuff, and just being really awful about it. And it's kind of weird to think this is called Freddy versus Jason. Are we meant to choose a team? Because I was definitely I wanted Jason to kill Freddy. That's in my mind. That's what I wanted anyway. Yeah.
Well, and it's not uncommon for Freddy to talk a lot in the films. It's something that Freddy and Jason have in common. Was in the third one was when Jason got his mask, and that's when the character really started to take off as the killer, because he became iconic, wearing that mask. It was the same with Freddy. It was the first one, he was just, this despicable killer person who came back and started attacking people in their dreams, right? The second one, they had a bit of a misstep with that. But it was in the third one that this interpretation of Freddy came about. The wisecracks, he's always quick with a joke, or a pun or something like that. He calls people bitch a lot. A lot. Is he meant to be funny though? Yeah, I think so. I'm meant to be laughing because I didn't find him funny at all in this film. That's the thing. Is that this is the last time that Robert Englund plays Freddy on film, and he's officially retired from the role. He's never going to do it again. And I think it's just worn out by this point. And it's not funny. The other ones, when he first started doing it, it was fine, But, he's been playing the role for 20 years, and after 20 years, it's just not funny anymore. I mean, he makes a pinball joke later in the film, and, you're like, what pinball? What kid in 2003 is playing a pinball machine? It's not funny anymore, Freddy. No, it's not. No. Just shut up. So we've got Lindemann and the stoner. We meet this guy named Freeberg and talk about horror tropes, and the guy with the beanie that can't stop smoking weed at totally inappropriate times. That's the character of Freeberg, and he shows up big time. So they escape the rave along with Will, Laurie, and Kia. Now Laurie actually confronts her father, which we've already spoken about her mother's death. She and Will actually go to Mark's house, only to discover Freddy's actually killing Mark. Now, apparently Deputy Stubbs during this period actually suspects a copycat Jason murderer. He actually approaches Laurie and her friends, who then piece together Freddy's plan. So it's an interesting kind of setup, when you get to that point. It seems friggin' ridiculous, right? When they discover Mark being killed, and like I said, this is the only kill that Freddy does in the whole movie. It's Mark. He attacks this kid and says, hey, I want you to send a message. So was that to imply that Freddy was actually going to let him go so he could go and tell more people that he got attacked by Freddy? He's already done that. He did that in the school and said, hey, Freddy's back. He told everybody. He told everyone. Everyone knows he's back. Yeah. But instead the kid goes, I'm not going to do that. So Freddy sets him on fire, and then in the real world, the burn materializes, and all it says is Freddy's back. What? Why? That made no sense. So, learning of the hypnosil that is being given to all of the people in the psychiatric institution, but it's being given to the kids too, is that right? Is that what you got out of it? Yes, and there was a ward of kids who were in comas because they'd taken too much of the hypnosil. After they learn of the hypnosil plan, they attempt to steal stock from the Western Hills, but Freddy actually possesses Freeberg. So after electrocuting Stubbs, Jason is actually tranquilized by the possessed Freeberg before falling unconscious. So yeah, it's getting complicated, man, with Freddy kind of possessing people, and it's hard to keep up with. What did you think of that whole scene too, where Freddy shows up like this, caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland, and smokes some pot with Freeberg and then like crawls down his throat or whatever.
I can't believe that passed whoever did the QC on those scenes. I thought, seriously, man, I'm just like, I can accept a lot, dude, but bad digital effects kind of kill me, and they totally take me out of the scene. Like, you'd be better just not having the effect there and just having it all in our imagination than just having that anything there, because those scenes looked bad. They felt bad. They weren't realized very well. The computer effects, yes, they were labor intensive, and somebody spent a lot of time putting them together and certainly did their best, but I can't believe these experienced filmmakers of, and Ronnie Yu, if you look at his filmography, he's not somebody that this is not his first film. Like, he's made, several films. Like, I think he's been making movies since the early 80s overseas somewhere. So he knows what's good and bad. And the fact that he let all that stuff get realized and not to say no when he actually saw it just kills me, man. I find it really hard to take, like, bad visual effects, and it's like these people should know better than to have that in the film. It would have been better to just remove it. So yeah, that's what I think of the Caterpillar.
All right. So, we're headed towards the big fight between Freddy and Jason. But before we get there, shall we check out some clips?
Yeah, let's do it.
I actually wanted to play this. This was like the mashup of the Nightmare on Elm Street theme and Friday the 13th, which I thought was very clever. And I played over the logo. Check this out.
Cool.
So cool.
Wow.
It's probably one of the coolest parts of the movie.
Nice.
I captured a little bit of Freddy as Mrs. Voorhees.
Oh, wow, cool.
I thought this was interesting. I thought it was funny.
Rise up, Jason! Your work isn't finished! Hear my voice and live again!
I don't know why they were so intent on trying to get Betsy Palmer back for so many years. They should have just recast her years ago and just had her in the films.
Yeah.
Because that woman, she was fine. Like,
Yeah.
she kind of looked the part. She was fine.
Which is a bit too old,
But generally speaking, I believed it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We got Gib here at the beginning with her dickhead boyfriend, Trey.
Oh, Trey, you answered my prayers. Thank you.
Whoa, babe. Tell you about kissing me after you smoked, huh?
Lighten up, they're menthols.
Oh, that's right. It's the menthol smoking, the forbidden smoking.
That guy is so weird with, like, the way he treats her. Like, I don't know why she even puts up with it. Like, it's so weird. Like, he gives a shit all the time.
I know. Like, he's a really awful human being. And I mean, I don't wish what happened to him on anyone, but he was really awful.
I know. He says this to her later after they've had sex.
Babe, you know I don't like to be touched after, okay?
Fine, I'll go have a shower then.
Good. Your hair smells like menthols anyway.
It's like so rude to her.
What a douchebag.
Ah.
Oh, that's crazy.
I love this line from Laurie as well.
He is a total idiot. Get him out of here.
I don't know why.
Crazy.
It just makes me laugh. I've got a clip that says needs assistance. I'm not sure what this is. Let's play it and find out.
You kids need some assistance?
Oh.
Where's that from? I'm trying to remember.
That was when they run outside and that cop just happened to be there.
Yes. Yeah.
We got Mark in the institution and in Western Hills. This was just a really weird side tangent, which I thought was funny.
How many times do I have to tell you, man? I don't do checkers. I'm an Uno guy, all right? So go grab the fucking Uno deck and we'll play, okay?
I thought that was actually one of the better lines of the film.
That is
actually.
really good.
I didn't mind. I'm an Uno guy.
He was good. He was like that guy. Like he played the part really good. But
Yeah, I thought he was fine. Yeah, exactly. He was good. I probably would have been happy to have a little bit more of them and a little bit less of the stoner guy.
I got this one that says invite only.
Check out this fucking guy. Well, hey, Jethro! This is a rave, not a Halloween party. Why don't you go find yourself a pig to fuck! Yeah, invite only corn poke, and you weren't invited. Son of a bitch.
I loved his reaction there too. Like when he says "son of a bitch," like the guy's just been killed. Like just crazy. Yeah, that's right. He had his head turned around.
Yeah, it was a bit much. But I did use for the opening line about the Everclear. Those two were weird. I've got one that I've just labeled pussy. So
okay,
let's
all right,
find out
bring it
what
on.
this is.
Nice.
And screw that clown. I mean, what kind of a pussy comes after you in your dreams, anyway? Now, that big-ass motherfucker back at the cornfield, all right? That's who we should be afraid of. Tell me who the fuck that was.
Oh, my God. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. There's some good clips.
Yeah, there are some good clips in there, man. There's some good lines in this film, and I feel like I'm being a bit harsh on the film. It wasn't that bad, but it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
are we moving forward?
Yes. So Freddy has managed to incapacitate Jason, but Freeberg is killed in the process, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter to Freddy because he's not actually in the real world.
But he will be soon.
He gets cut in half after injecting Jason with some tranquilizer, right? So Jason passes out. Now, at this point, Laurie has like some sort of weirdo dream thing about what happened to Jason as a child. She kind of ends up like in Jason's dream where like Freddy is also there.
Yeah, and she sees Jason they go back to Camp Crystal Lake, and she sees him like at the camp being bullied by everybody else and being led towards the lake and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they have the moment, which again is in every Nightmare on Elm Street film, is that they figure out if they can grab a hold of something in the nightmare and then wake up, they pull it out of the nightmare. And that's how they always bring Freddy into the real world, so they can beat him.
So they can dispose of him.
Yeah. So that's the plan,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
to go in and pull Freddy out, right?
Mm.
So she's doing that through Jason, who is being attacked in the nightmare by Freddy. And yeah, I don't know, it's just a weird sequence of Jason as a kid in this whole thing. And it gets to the point where it's like, you know, the kids have pushed Jason into the lake, and you look over at the counselors, because we always knew that the counselors weren't paying attention, Jason drowned in the lake.
Yeah.
And when Laurie gets there, they are literally just having sex right on the balcony with all the kids like just 10 meters away from them. And I was like, what? Like, I get like maybe they went inside and had sex. They were not just on the porch there with other counselors
Doing it
right next
right
to them,
there.
just doing
I
it
know.
right there. And then he turns into Freddy and stuff anyway. But I'm like, I'm not sure this is an accurate representation, but whatever. It was just stupid.
So they actually take the unconscious Jason back to Camp Crystal Lake. And this is what we were saying before, like somehow Elm Street and Crystal Lake is like an hour away, and you know, meanwhile you got Freddy is actually battles Jason in the dream world. Freddy is actually in his environment, has the advantage with his dream powers, but despite impaling Jason with his own machete, beating him, brutally slamming him around the plant and using equipment to crush him, Jason keeps coming. He just doesn't stop. And we all know you can't stop Jason, just like you can't really stop Freddy, as we'll get to a bit later on. But after Freddy's actually thrown onto a pipe which begins to release water, he actually learns Jason is afraid of it on the account of drowning, which I thought was actually ridiculous, because we've had Jason in water like 50,000 times in 10 or 11 films. So for him to literally stop with fear, I thought was just a bit silly. Yeah, didn't you think?
Yeah, and then they draw from, of all things, part 8 and have Jason turn into a little boy under the water. And that wasn't even water in part 8. It was some sort of industrial waste or whatever it was. So, yeah, I don't know. It was a super weird sequence. I'll give him one thing. There was, like, one really good visual as Freddy jumps up out of the lake. And it goes into, like, a weird, like, slow motion. And everything sort of goes all, like, tinted red and stuff as he pulls Jason into the boiler room to have that bit of a battle. Like, that was a cool visual, but beyond that, yeah, this whole thing, Jason's afraid of water and stuff, like, nah, not really.
So Laurie decides to go to sleep and she saves Jason, but Freddy actually attacks her, revealing himself as her mother's killer. So it wasn't her dad that killed her. It was Freddy kind of possessing her dad. Anyway, so Jason awakens due to Laurie and chases the others into a cabin. Lindemann is mortally wounded and dies, and the cabin actually ignites. And Laurie is actually awakened, pulling Freddy into real life, which actually shocks Freddy and reveals his own fear of fire, as it was the method in which he was originally killed.
Get it? Fire and water.
I know. So it's at this point that we actually have Jason fighting Freddy. So it's all on from here, isn't it?
Yeah, and it starts off like pretty full on. Like Jason's picking up Freddy and dragging him through windows and walls and stuff. And I think Freddy pretty much quickly realizes that he's not really much of a physical match for Jason.
No. He's just got the claws. That's his power, essentially. Yeah. Like, that's all he can really... That's the way he inflicts damage, where Jason's a menace. And he can't really be killed. We've said that 1,000 times. He's indestructible. Like, didn't they come up with a method in several films ago that you had to, like, kill his heart or something like that?
Or something, yeah. I don't know.
There was some kind of strange way of actually killing him.
And even if Freddy dies in the real world, like, he's just going to go back to being, like, a dream guy again. When you really think about, like, what would happen in a fight between these two, like, neither of them are going to die. Spoiler alert, that's pretty much how it ends.
What did you think of Destiny's Child taunting Freddy? What did you think of that?
Destiny's Child. I love that you just call it that. Yeah, pointless, really. Like, Laurie and Will are running away, and Kia literally just distracts them with no plan to get away from them.
No plan whatsoever.
No, she just goes, "Hey, Freddy," and he goes, "Doke meat." Racist much. She has no plan of getting away and just dies. Like, she just gives her life up for no reason.
But before she dies, she's kind of like really like taunting him and saying, you know, like, you're wearing those claws on your hands. What are you trying to compensate for? Something in between your legs? And like, it's pretty bad.
And then they get into this fight because, I don't know, suddenly they're at some sort of construction site. I don't know if they were like planning on reopening the camp again. Some corporation has come in there and put together this freaking massive construction site.
Dude, you're forgetting it's Camp X-Men. That's what's happening right now. They haven't really shown your Wolverine yet.
Freddy's got the claws.
He's got the claws, hasn't he?
But yeah, I don't know. He's like flicking the caps off compressed air bottles.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Throwing down like metal bars and stuff at Jason, and it's all impaling him. And I don't know. Whatever. It's not that big or an epic a fight, really.
But I did find Freddy's death, which, well, kind of dies a bit, but it was pretty full on because Jason takes Freddy's arm off and Freddy stabs Jason's eyes with his glove. And then Freddy thinks he's won and he goes after Laurie and Will. And because Laurie and Will are pouring gasoline on the docks and actually set it on fire, which ignites the propane tanks that actually blows Freddy and Jason into the lake. But Freddy climbs out and attempts to kill Laurie and Will, but is actually impaled by Jason with his own clawed arm as Laurie decapitates Freddy, causing his body to fall back into the lake. And I actually thought that sequence was kind of cool. I'm not a big gruesome guy, but the fact that you actually saw Freddy's own glove come through and take him off, like the look on his face was kind of great, actually. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was kind of just implausible that you could stab his arm through his chest that way. I don't know. It was all just, I don't know. I didn't much like the big end battle between them. I didn't mind the battle when they were in the dream sequence. Like, that was pretty good. But this whole end battle, I was just like, yeah, whatever.
So we've got Laurie and Will who actually leave. They actually escape Camp Crystal Lake together. So they're survivors of the Freddy vs. Jason saga. So they're writing books, they're appearing on chat shows, they're doing all kinds of things. But afterwards, and this was a strange scene, Jason emerges from the water holding his machete and Freddy's severed head. And then out of nowhere, Freddy breaks the fourth wall, looks at the camera and winks, and then laughs off screen as he's leaving. So again, that's why I keep referring to the fact that Freddy kind of dies, but not really, does he?
Neither of them would have. So
No. So what's the purpose of the film then?
yeah, I know, right? Like, who won this battle, Jason or Freddy? Like,
Yeah,
neither of
why make it? Just, I don't know. Like, they could have come up with a better kind of story. I think the actual story of this film was a bit lackluster.
I know, 20 years of trying to find the right script, the right cast, the right director, and this is what they settled on to be the best of the best.
And that's the end of the film. We don't see anything more. And I did Google if there was any end credit scene, and there wasn't.
All right, so let's check out some remaining clips here. I'm pretty sure I captured this. It just says bitch, so it's got to be Freddy calling someone bitch because he does that all the time.
We gotta go! Now! Come on!
Let me handle this, bitch.
He just loves to do that.
He does, doesn't he?
I've written this dead on her feet.
Aren't you gonna help the kid?
Can't you see I'm busy here?
You mean you're not coming?
It's not my fault this bitch is dead on her feet.
With the bitch again.
Oh my god.
Shoehorned in there as a Freddy joke. You mean you're not coming? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got that that insult he makes to Kelly Rowland.
How sweet. Dark meat.
Oh my god. Racist Freddy.
And then her response, I did capture that too.
What is with the butternuts? You trying to compensate for something? Maybe coming up a little short there between the legs, Mr. Kruger? I mean, you got these teensy-weensy little things, and Jason has got this big old thing, like...
This big old thing. It's actually not a bad speech. It's ridiculous, but it's not a bad speech.
And then the last clip is... I don't know why, but after she insults him about all this, teensy-weensy little thing, she says this.
You're not even scary. You're not even scary.
Oh my god.
I thought it was weird the way she said that.
Yeah.
So that's the clips.
Cool.
So what do you say? Rating, recommend?
Yeah, I can't recommend this film, man. Like, I really can't. I had a real difficult time with it. I didn't really enjoy the battle aspect. I wish I was a little bit more au fait with the Nightmare series prior to watching it. I probably should have done my homework slightly more than I actually did. I know the Nightmare films, but I'm not an expert on them, and I haven't seen them in however long it's been since they've come out. I kind of really wish they got somebody a little bit closer to the series. Now, it would have been great if they got a Wes Craven involved, or even Sean Cunningham from Friday. I suspect their take on the characters probably would have been slightly more authentic, and certainly probably pushing towards a slightly more original story. I really don't know too much about Ronnie Yu as a director, but I know that he's not somebody that I've really paid much attention to, and just looking at his filmography since 2003, like, he's made a couple of films here and there, but certainly nothing all that outstanding or interesting. I'm not saying he's bad, he's not bad, but I just don't know if his sensibilities were quite in touch with what Freddy vs. Jason kind of should have been and could have been. It could have been a great film, and what we get is some fairly bad digital effects with some pretty tripe kind of dialogue and some fairly tired horror tropes throughout the film. So if I had to give it a rating, I'm going to be a bit harsh on this one, man. I'm about 4 Jason machetes out of 10. That's kind of like where I'm at. I just didn't get into the groove with this one, man. I said to you, I was looking forward to next week's film, which is the final Friday the 13th film that we'll be, talking about on the Rewatch podcast. Well, at this stage, unless they make another one. I'm just looking forward to getting back to just Jason and just having that story told to me. I just wasn't that interested in the whole Freddy thing, and the teenagers and the actors I didn't like that much. But anyway.
Yeah, and I pretty much echo everything you just said. It's a bit old, it's a bit tired. They did not cast Kane Hodder as Jason. That is a big strike in my books. The guy had made it his own. He was just as important as Robert Englund playing Freddy. in my opinion. So the characterization of Jason was a little off for me. I didn't really like it. It looked a bit weird too. I wish they'd kept, maybe, as much as they didn't care much about continuity, they did care about the continuity of Jason. So yeah, I don't know, just throughout the film, the tone was weird. I didn't really like the actors, and I didn't like the story either. I said it was like 20 years of planning this, and that was the best story they could come up with, was with these actors. It didn't feel right. And then, like I said, aside from a few really cool visuals, the battles weren't that good either.
No.
So yeah, I like Freddy, even though it was getting a bit tight here. So really, I can't really give it a recommend or not recommend. I'm just a bit blah on the whole thing. I'm just going to come down on, I'm just going to say a 5. 5 battle royales.
Do you know what kind of bums me out though, man, ultimately, is that as I said to you before, I hadn't seen this film I saw it at the movies in 2003, but not for like forever. In the rewatch of Friday the 13th, I was actually quite looking forward to this one. This was like on my list as like a tick. I was like, I'd read reasonably interesting things about the film, and some people that I had read that didn't mind it, like not loved it to death, but didn't mind it, and it was one that I was looking forward to. So I was quite disappointed when I watched it the other day, and I thought, oh man, this could have been great, and it just wasn't great, was it?
Exactly. And I came away from this film with just one thought in my head, and that thought was,
I'm more than a little concerned.
Nice one. Because they never bothered to try and do a follow-up to this. There were plans for it, I guess, when they were making it, but it just never materialized. So
I don't know why they didn't make a follow-up, because the film, box office wise,
I know,
didn't do too badly. And as we've learned with Friday the 13th, the quality of the film doesn't really matter, because if it makes money, they'll make another one.
And that's just it, because next thing they did was try to reboot the franchise. We're up to the last installment in the series. They tried to reboot it, and we're going to talk about that next week. It was 8 years ago, back in 2009, so yeah. Can they do a fresh restart of the series? I guess we'll find out. Alright guys, so for more great podcasts, make sure you head over to Golden Sparrow Media at goldensparrowmedia.com/Apple. And you can join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast and on Twitter at rewatchpod. And also, please give us your rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It's always very helpful. And we're, of course, available on your podcast app of choice. Doesn't necessarily have to be Apple Podcasts. All right, Nathan, thank you for joining me. It's been a long road, but we're going to speak about the last film in the franchise next week.
I know, yeah, no, should be good. I'm looking forward to it, so see you next week.
So until next time, it just leaves me to say, dude, Goalie was pissed about something.
You think that I'm afraid of you, huh? Now that we're in the real world? Come on.
Sparrow Media and the Rewatch podcast are not associated with the copyright holders of these films, and no copyright infringement is intended.
They were making love while that young boy drowned.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is solely for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes, as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
It's gonna take more than a poke in the ribs to put down this old dog.
Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
Cool, JJ. Parents really came through.
Copyright 2017, Golden Spiral Media.
You're a dead meat, slime bag.